The Spanish Civil War was probably one of the most defining moments in the long and storied history of the nation of Spain. But the Spanish Civil War wasn't just the Condor Legion of Germany, the bombing of Guernica, and Francisco Franco and the Nationalists. There was a whole other story that was completely covered up by all the fighting and grief that the Spanish Civil War dealt out during the duration. Little do people know that the women of Spain had also quietly but surely worked themselves into history. They did so much work for the soldiers of their respective sides, as well as backing the women's rights movements in Spain. They made this impact on the war through the jobs that they picked up when the men left for the battlefields, the roles in the women's rights movements, and the overall outcome of their work during the war. During most wars in the 20th century, men usually had to leave the factories and workplaces in order to join the war effort. Therefore, it was all up to the women to fill the vacancies that the men created. By filling the vacancies left behind, the women tried to stabilize the economic structure of Spain. The women made the most impact in the job industry through working in the factories where most of the job vacancies were. Also, other primary roles that the women of Spain held was that they organized relief efforts to people who needed help all around Spain. These relief efforts weren't just for civilians, but for the soldiers on the battlefield too. Some women decided to join local militias and fight alongside the men on the front lines. If the women weren't fighting, then they were setting up hospitals for the injured as well as setting up dining halls for the men in the militia. Another major role that women played during the Spanish Civil War was that they spearheaded many women's civil rights movements all around Spain. It was Lucia Sanchez Sarno that started one of the most powerful and influential women's rights movements of the Civil War, the Mujeres Libres. This was an organization that was run by Spanish women that advocated for the equality of men and women, as well as women's rights. The Mujeres Libres also set up hospitals specializing in childbirth and taught the public about health and birth control. One of the best ways that the Mujeres Libres spread their word about women's rights was through newspapers. This way, women all around Spain could know about the movement.
The Spanish woman achieved many things during the Spanish Civil War. It includes the legitimation of abolition. Shirley Mangini said in her book, Memories of Resistance, Women Activists from the Spanish Civil War, that the Spanish Civil War was a flash of freedom from the oppression of the past. Women did a lot behind the scenes and were important for the win. But there is also a different opinion about the women. It is said that many women were too aggressive. They were pouring boiling water and oil on invaders and would fight more for their ideas than for Spain in total. Also, the outcome from their movements weren't as good as hoped. They still weren't paid as much as the men, and if they worked, they always worked longer than 12 hours, before and after the war. Even if there were authors and scientists who say that women did not achieve what they aimed for, we do think that women were playing an important role in the Spanish Civil War. We can see that after the Spanish Civil War, women were more independent, were allowed to vote, and even earned money. After a new reform, there was a regulated work time, and women could spend more time with their children. They were truly the backbone of the revolution and helped with committees for food, messaging, and in the first few months they were fighting along with the other men.